Hi guys, welcome along to this online Smash event. We've got some familiar faces back on the screen again this year. A couple of guys that you'll, if you tuned in about this time last year, will remember we interviewed, all focused around reproductive performance and results on farm. So we're going to revisit some of the material from last year and just have a little look at what's changed this year. Before we do so, it's always important for us to acknowledge the sponsors and supporters that are behind Smash and the Smash events. So obviously DairyNZ is our primary funder and supporter, and also we have Balance, Barenbrug, LIC, FMG, BNZ and Pioneer. So for those of you who don't know who I am, my name's Wade Bell. I have a role working for Pioneer as a farm systems specialist, and also have a role on the Smash committee and the Smash Trust. So I might just quickly hand over to, or jump over to you, Dave. Just introduce yourself and where you farm and where you're from, and then Jair, and then we'll hook into it.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Wade. So, yeah, we in South and Alice in the equity partnership here, 10 minutes south of Te Awamutu, milking corn with cows. We run a system 5 here. And and just 2-herd system, and I've been here for 10 years. So
so been around the trips for a while, and prior to that involved with DairyNZ.
Yes, that's right. So I was a consulting officer for about 5 years with DairyNZ before coming back to the farm and trying to walk the talk. And yeah, I'm still here, so that's always good.
Yeah, good man. Yeah, and hey, look, pretty bold call putting all your your repro results up online and engaging this conversation, because it's not always the easy thing to put your head up and put yourself out in the spotlight. So it's really cool to have you on board again, and it's kind of nice to come and do a revisit, and we'll get into that shortly. Jair, just in terms of your role with LIC, just for those that haven't perhaps listened before.
Yep. No, so I am. My name is Jair Mandriaza. I work for LIC as a reproduction advisor. Background: I was born in Brazil. I had a vet degree from Brazil. Came to New Zealand. Been here for 18 years now. So consider myself. Well, I am a Kiwi now, and I consider myself that way too. But very, very, very interested in repro, anything repro. So yeah.
And you've been in that role a long time, eh? So you've
I have
seen a lot, and you've been around the country in terms of it's been quite a national role too, eh?
It has indeed. Yeah, that's very true. About 13 years now, just about 13 years in LIC. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. So we're going to tap into your knowledge and background very shortly, but what we thought it would be good to do is have a quick recap on last year's results, because that's, Dave, essentially what got us started on this journey in talking about your repro results in particular that weren't that you weren't thrilled about last year, I'd say, is probably the best description. So I've put those. I've put the fertility focus report summary up on screen. Hopefully, people will get to see that shortly. So this is the kind of the last 3 years. But Dave, in particular, do you just want to recap on that 2022 season? Because that's what got this conversation started, right?
Yes, that's right, Wade. Bit of a disaster, to be fair, and Smash was looking for someone who had a poor result to put their hand up and talk about it. And I mean, none of us really liked doing that, but at the end of the day, we really wanted to improve things, and we knew, we documented what we've done, and so we thought it would be a nice little journey to go on. So yeah, last year, as you can see, some of the data there. We had a good 3-week submission rate, so things were looking really good. And then the wheels just fell off the wagon pretty much as we went through mating. So 6-week and calf rate had dropped down to that 60%. Our conception rate was the real killer at 43% there. Yeah. So yeah, things weren't looking good, and we knew they weren't. So we sort of went for a little bit longer with our mating period, but yeah, obviously still ended up with a bad result. We were all AI last year. We did all we tried doing all the things right. So pre-mating heats, we used tail paint, scratchies, you name it. We sort of did it, and that's why it's quite disappointing to end up with that result. So good calving spread leading into it as well. Probably not as good as previous years, but was still okay. So yeah, that, I guess, like you said, Wade, that's what sort of took us down this road, and sort of looking for answers. And I guess out of the summary from last year was really that, look, we'd done a lot of things right, and we couldn't really pinpoint one thing that we should have done or shouldn't have done. So it was a matter of trying to do those basics right again this year, focus on a couple of other little things, and see how we go.
Yeah, nice. So yeah, I think that was a pretty nice summary. I don't think we draw on any really specific conclusions, because a large chunk of it was in that little black box of the unknown of conception rate. And one of the other things that the other management practices that's involved in your farm and your farm system, or has been once a day. And perhaps we'll touch on kind of where you've gone with that this year as well. But so I guess fast forward to this year, so we kind of keep that moving. And just before we jump on, if we have got listeners online at the moment and you want to fire in some questions, just feel free to do so, and we'll try and pick them up in the conversation as well and make sure that they get addressed. So, Dave, 2023, you talked about keeping the basics, doing the basics right still. So you did those, but what changes did you make? Because there's quite a significantly improved result for this season, should I say?
Yeah, that's right. So as you said, we kept the basics right. We still did the pre-mating heats. Submission rate was really good again, at that sort of just above 90%. I guess the difference between last year and this season, the young herd was on once a day all season last year, and we actually tried our hand at having them on twice a day. This year we felt a bit disheartened last year to get a poor repro result on top of, I guess, a hit in production, which we're willing to take, having a herd on once a day. But I guess we didn't get the fruits from doing that. It was sort of a lose-lose situation. So we sort of challenged ourselves to maybe go back to that twice-a-day system. We could see the cows twice a day as well, a little bit more, and just keep an eye on their feeding, big focus on their feeding and keeping things pretty consistent.
Yeah.
Last season we had done all AI. This year we decided to go back to bulls. Our result last season didn't really drive that decision. It was more of a personal decision. We welcomed a second child in the middle of mating this year, so it just made things a bit easier for us. So we had Angus bulls on farm after the AB period, and then we followed that up with short gestation, which was the same as last year. We did short gestation at the end to tail off. And so they were probably the two biggest changes, I guess. We did have a few less cows this year as well, in the herd. But I guess we did make a little bit more grass silage this season than we normally would as well. So we did try and just keep things a little bit more consistent. Because we're a system 5, I just wanted to try and keep that supplement going in fairly consistent through that mating period.
Yeah. So can you expand on that a little bit, Dave? Because I know this has been it's a bit of a personal conflict for you, right? Because from a management playbook, if you like, pulling feed right out when there's enough pasture is kind of the right thing to do. You've kind of gone a little bit against that with keeping a bit of feed going in. So what sort of feed and for how long, and what was the makeup of that?
Yeah, so basically in the past, we have, sort of pasture management 101. If I put my old DRNZ hat back on, would take out a lot of the bulky feed as we head into that surplus period to try and manage that surplus a bit better and eat more grass, basically. This year, I kept our maize, the bulkiest feed in the diet, at a low rate, admittedly, a couple of kilos, and just decided to keep things fairly consistent. And if I hit a surplus, then would take that as grass silage. So a little bit against the grain, I guess you could say, and I don't know if we can draw any conclusions on that in terms of the result that we've ended up with. But my whole focus was still on that pasture management, pasture quality, but just more of a consistent diet all the way through. And it just gave me a few more options if we had a bad weather event come through as well, because I had a little bit more bulk feed to throw at them if I did need to.
Yeah, and I think you've made that point too with the once a day too, isn't it? On those crap days, you just get another opportunity when they're coming to the shed, to try and keep things as consistent right through that period as possible with those animals as well.
Yeah, that's right. And so we're actually visually seeing them come through, another milking, I guess.
Yeah. So I think the key thing out of that, that this is something that you've specifically tried, when you've analysed the data and the numbers and, what areas, holding on to the things that are done well, that are fundamental, and then just tweak things a little bit in response to the areas that weren't, so in your case, the conception rate was a real kind of focus area, and okay, well, what things have I got within my control that I can refine and modify, and that's not going to be the answer for everybody by any stretch.
No, that's right. We had to look at what things we could change, and when we really analysed the numbers last year, it wasn't as if we had a really poor submission rate or a poor calving spread that we could sort of pinpoint and say, well, look at this. This was horrendous. We should have maybe done a few seeders with some non-cyclers and that sort of thing. So, we really just wanted to focus on some of those things that we could control ourselves, and the feeding was one of them.
I'm going to come over to you, Jair, in a second, but one thing to note, Dave, and we've probably been a little bit harsh on you, aren't you, with particularly with the knot and calf rate, in terms of what you measured on farm on the day, was slightly better than those numbers that are from your fertility focus report, but that's just symptomatic of some cows going or leaving the system between mating and when you're doing your PD.
Yeah, that's right. So, I guess every year we have a few cows, and most herds will be the same that are maybe inseminated but leave the farm before that final PD. So that's why we've got slightly elevated numbers there, because those cows that have left are just assumed as empty within the fertility focus report. So, to give you an example, we scanned at 10.5% empty this year on our herd.
So there's a sort of 2 or 3% difference. So Joya, coming over to you, you've obviously done a deeper dive into Dave's numbers. I'll take us down now, but you've done a bit deeper dive, so we can look at some of the comparisons, and it'd be interesting to get your thoughts in terms of what you're seeing in some of those trends within Dave's data, and how that perhaps reflects in the regional data, because anecdotally I'm hearing some better results from farmers around the region, and it'd be kind of nice to know if that's the same sort of thing that you're seeing.
That's exactly what's happening. So far, right? Because we are kind of early in the season to get a real feel for what the final results will be like for the year. But we're looking like we were looking good already when it was mating time. We sort of could see that there was an improved submission rate and non-return rate, because we keep an eye out, I guess, for when I say this is because we get the opportunity to run fertility focus reports for all farmers that have a link to LIC, whatever product, whatever service we provide them, we can see their data. And we could see that last year we had in 2022 we had a 1% drop in submission rate, 1% drop in non-return rate as the fertility focus report non-return rate. And then this year we're back 1% up in submission rate, back to where we were before, and also an improved non-return rate, which is again another 1% up compared to 2022. So far, we have about 4,000 herds that are produced a detailed fertility focus report, which is where we measure the 6-week in calf rate from, and we're a couple of percent above what we were last year. So last year we were 6.6, 67%, so we're 68, 69 at the moment. But the full data set last year was about 4,600 herds. So we still have a few hundred herds to come in to just fill up the data set. Not in calf rates, I won't comment now because there's still a whole bunch of people that have rechecks to do, especially I'm looking at national data. So then the South Island is a little bit further behind us. In the Waikato, where I'm based, to give all the numbers. So in general, we get the final number, a really good indication of where things are at about May. And then the final numbers are in 1st of June. We finish looking at it once the season ends on the 31st of May. And then we get the final numbers. But it's looking very promising. 6-week in calf rate's looking good. Conception rates are up. Last year, we had the lowest year in the last 10 that we're looking at. That was about 50.9% average last year. The best year in 2019 was about 54. This year is definitely up. Around 53 at the moment. So look, good signs. I guess and then you asked me about Dave's point of view. We had this conversation about how things had gone, and really the conception rate is the thing that changed significantly. It's I guess even great work from Dave. He had a much, as we could see in your figures, that he had there a much slower calving pattern, yet he managed to keep the submission rates in the 90 plus, which is not common. The average for the top quartile in New Zealand is about 89. So he's definitely up there in submission rates. And when I look at his minder data, it looks beautiful. Like there is no signs of intervention or anything. At the end of 6 weeks, he had about every single cow in his herd mated, which is not something that happens often. So this is kudos to him. The year before, in 2021 and 2022, he had much better calving pattern, had the same submission rate. So they managed to do that this year again with a poorer calving pattern. And the outcome of that was an increase in conception rates. He had 56, 53 average in 2020, 2021. Last year, 43%. And this year, he's back up to 52%. So that is definitely the game changer. And we could see when we compared the other day, when we compared the 2022 season, we could see that he had started the 2022 season just as well as he started his 2023 season, and then things just diverted away. This year, things were more settled for him, and we can see just the massive difference that there is. An extra 10% of cows pregnant in the first 3 weeks, 12% of cows pregnant in the first 6 weeks, an increase of 6-week in calf rate of 12% to the year before, and even 4% on the year before that is significant. It's not very common for us to see these jumps. People can do in a good season increase 2-3% or something like that, but to get 12% increase is quite outstanding, really. We talked a little bit about not in calf rate. We can see here a breakdown. So when we analyze and mine down the fertility focus report, we talk about eligible cows calved in the season, present in the herd and mating start date, and then anything that's not recorded in calf is part of the not in calf. So there's 13 cows all up that are either one doubtful, 11 that were culled, like you were saying, Dave, before PDing, and one that was not removed or not PD'd, and that makes the difference between your 10.5 empty rate to the 13% not in calf rate. So that's where the numbers are coming from. Looking a little bit around very quickly, the impact of calving patterns. So you can see here the proportion of cows that are in each calving group. Early calvers being cows calved in the first 3 weeks, mediums the weeks 4, 5, and 6, late calvers 7, 8, and 9, and so on. And I guess the beauty here is to see that on Dave's system, he's running in his early calving cows 78% 6-week in calf rate, 11% not in calf rate, and just under 12 weeks of mating, which is effectively the industry target. So his farming system supports that sort of level of performance. And then when we go looking at the performance of the herd by age group, 2-year-olds we're on target, 78%, 13% not in calf rate. The 3-year-olds had a incredibly outstanding performance, 82% 6-week in calf rate, and almost none empty, not in calf. And then we get what we talked about the other day with you guys before we were caught up to see what we're talking about. It's like just to see the big difference in performance that you have when you have a higher proportion of older cows. I see this time and time again. The vast majority, I would say 95% of herds in New Zealand, the 9-year-old pluses do struggle to get in calf, and they hold you back, I guess, in 6-week in calf rate and also not in calf rate. So we also had a little look when we discussed this around conception rates, and we saw the variation here. This is a report we run on request from farmers, or the agri managers have access to it, where we can see weekly conception rates. So we were all puzzled about the difference in conception rate on the second week on the animals that used, I guess, replacement semen. The others weren't as good in the weeks 1, 2, and 3. We always think about this. If you're using something else, a beef or something usually isn't a poorer quality cow, so you don't necessarily not expect that performance to be lower in conception rates. But once things got a little bit better in the weeks 4, 5, and 6, it was good down here. Low numbers though, very low numbers, and up the top here is the typical trend. In general, the first 3 or 4 weeks of the mating period are where farmers have achieved the highest conception rates, and then as you go through the weeks of mating, things are changing on the environment, I guess. Like if we think about the grass that's available in mid-October to the grass that's available in the first part of December, is probably quite different. And then we have those things about cows that have already been mated and have failed before and then get mated again. Then Dave had some SGL semen that he used, 19 straws, got another 7 cows there in calf. So there was nothing really that we identified that was that different. I guess the good thing, you talked about this, Dave, going twice a day with your young stock. Obviously, your younger cows, the first calvers, obviously that worked for you. At a 78% 6-week in calf rate, 13% not in calf rate, milking twice a day all year round is very good. Is as good as you can get it, really, in general. I guess the only thing we talked about the other day is that when you would think about it on a national level, we expect 2-year-olds to perform better than the 3-year-olds, perform better than the 4 to 8s, and the 9 pluses are there, and the gap should be about 2% between these two, and then another 3% to the 4 to 8s. And then we discussed a little bit like how because the 3-year-olds were so excellent, I guess it became harder for the 4 to 8s to perform perhaps as good as it could be, but there's an opportunity. And I guess that the good thing is, given how well these 3-year-olds got in calf this year, they're going to calve so early next year, and we know that your early calving cows do perform well. So there is still a lot of scope for improvement in performance coming next year.
I'm going to pick up on a question, Jair, that's come through, and it's probably one that you're just touching on there, is just that the difference in that conception rate between the once a day, twice a day. It's kind of what Dave's done. It kind of goes against the grain almost a little bit of what we might expect, and he's obviously explained the reason for that. But there was actually there was an improvement, wasn't there, in that group, even though it was a switch to once a day. Sorry, so twice a day.
So twice a day. Yeah. So in general, when we looked at data from twice a day and once a day herds, what we found was that the twice a day herds have the national average conception rates in the 50s, 50 something between 50 and 54, and once a day herds will be sitting somewhere around 58 to 60. So they're kind of achieving top quartile performance. It is definitely unusual what happened to Dave this year, sort of thing. It's in general, I see the opposite, but I guess at the same time, the way I see it is that it doesn't really. I guess if you have well-reared animals, they come into the herd on, but target body condition score, and you can manage to look after all their needs in terms of energy, demand, and minimize body condition score loss. There is no reason why animals that are on twice a day cannot get in calf. It's like anything we see. There is a distribution, as you know, like these days. The percentage of herds that do twice a day all the time is a lot smaller, about 30-35%, as I remember. So, but you have a distribution in performance, some excellent performance, some not so good, and the same goes to once a day. It's just that the average of the once a day is to the right, I guess, to the positive end, where the average of the twice a day is the national average, effectively. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I'll pick up on another point that you made there, Jair, and this is back to you, Dave, about the older cows. I think it might have been last year you mentioned, it was some of the impact of your reproductive performance, a hangover from kind of, previous years of herd sale, stock sales, and keeping animals that maybe you shouldn't. Do you want to just elaborate on that? Because that's kind of come out in the data a little bit too, eh?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it all just came to a head last year at the wrong time. I think there's a lot of things flowed into that result last year. As you said, Wade, from a bit of a hangover from previous years. We used to do a little bit of winter milking. So because we carried cows over, we reared less young stock. So then because we reared less young stock, there's less coming in. So if we had a high empty rate, we've had to hold on to cows longer that we necessarily wouldn't have wanted to keep, just to keep numbers up there. Yeah. So that's why we've seen that little bit more of a swing to that older age group, that 9 years plus. So yeah, it has been a bit of a hangover, I guess, a little bit, and we're just sort of trying to iron out some of that stuff at the moment with looking at replacement rate and that sort of thing. Yeah. And I'll just pick up on a couple of those questions there quickly.
Yeah, cool.
Just around the young stock and calving rate and that. So, yeah, I guess calving rate was slower this year, as Jair pointed out earlier. So we knew we had to have a really big focus on management. And we every year we have our colostrum cows once a day. We never actually use a fence at all for our colostrum cows. So they basically just get a new paddock every day with ad lib grass and PK and lime and you name it, they get it. So we have a massive focus on that transition period, and maybe that's flowing through to some of that submission rate data. In terms of our young stock, we've always been pretty vigilant with our young stock. We rear our calves here at home until May. We're always really they're always really performing really well on their live weight gain and hitting well above target, and we work pretty closely with our grazier there as well. So yeah, we like to think we do a good job of our young stock. I think one thing I was just thinking about though, with that 3-year-old age group that we've picked up on that did exceptional this year, it's probably worth noting that as a 2-year-old, they would have been once a day for the whole year the previous season. So, you could say they've come into the herd, and as a 3-year-old in a lot better state, fitter, healthier, to have a good result as a 3-year-old.
That's true.
Yeah. I see there's a few more questions coming through, Dave, which is awesome. Actually, some of them relate are probably directed to you, and I'll give you a minute. Jair, there was one a little further up that might have been something more directed to you. I think I'll just read the question. And so, do you ascertain whether you had non-cycling issue or long non-return issue last season? And did you tweak anything this year to support hormone production? So that might actually be a mix both ways potentially. But that's the short return, long return thing as part of that question.
Yeah. So we had a look at this year. I guess we did see some some long returns there, and that's actually something that we highlighted was quite different between last year and this year. But then I guess the tricky part here is that last year you did all AB, so your return to analysis is true. So then this time around you had a gap with bulls in the middle. So if cows returned in the normal time and then they returned again once you were doing SGL, then it will look like there's a whole bunch of long returns. Yeah. So but having said that, I have seen quite a few people having long returns, a bit of more phantom cow type of stuff. Cows get made at the beginning, they are doing nothing, or they either turn up empty, or all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of them coming up. Like if people are doing all AB, they are picking that up, or coming back for SGL, they're picking up some really long returns. But
and yep, Dave.
Just to follow on from that, I mean, with the non-cycler question, we every year, because we have those pre-mating heats, we make sure the vets come and check out our non-cycling cows or any cows that we think might be an issue. So there's never really been any alarm bells heading into the mating period to say, look, we've got a massive problem here, we need to do something about it. That's all gone pretty well. The Crispin's question there around the milk composition, it is something I'm following a lot more closely now, and I guess that's what's driven some of my behaviour around my feeding through mating, is just if I can keep the feeding consistent, my milk seems to be a bit more consistent as well. So I mean, as we all know, that milk's a pretty good indicator, the composition and the volume of consistent feeding and getting through weather events and things like that. So because of the system that I run, we do have a few more options up our sleeve to try and keep that where we want it. In terms of pasture samples and that sort of thing, we were taking samples at that time, but off the top of my head, there wasn't anything that really jumped out at us that we're really looking for anyway. It was just more monitoring my own feeding on the feed pad.
So it wasn't really a sort of a really detailed deep dive into the nutrition per se. It was more about just trying to keep a pretty consistent sort of feed intake, and it ironed out perhaps some of those variable weather days and just trying to keep it pretty even and consistent throughout.
Yep.
Look, I'm kind of conscious of time, and I always want to sort of try and finish with maybe 1 to 2 or 3 key messages, and it's always good to hear those from you guys and the experiences that you have. So, Dave, if there are kind of sort of 1 or 2 things that sort of stand out from your point of view as a sort of a key message or learning, what would it be?
I think through all the analysis that we've done on the farm and how we carry out our mating program, I think it's just shown this year we've still got to stick to those basics. I think using the pre-mating heat data has been really useful. At the end of the day, for our system here, it doesn't matter if we've done all AI or bulls, you can still get the same result depending on how you execute it. But for myself and the farm here, a big focus going forward is going to be on a couple of those easy win areas, such as the older cow group. We can see conception rate and repro performance there is very poor, letting the the herd down, and also that calving spread. Just Repro 101, a tighter calving will produce better results, and that's pretty evident in some of the data that we've got in front of us as well. And really just probably beefing up my replacement rate a little bit as well to make sure I've got options up my sleeve and we don't get ourselves into another hole again.
Yeah, and hold on to those Repro results from those young animals too, eh?
That's right. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. And Jair, from your point of view, some things you've done. Obviously, a lot of analysis of Dave's results in relative to national. Some key messages or views from your point.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's like it's around the opportunities. Really, is like just have a look at the information you have available and find out where the opportunities are, and think about doing things. I guess Dave is kind of the exception. He kind of, although he did a lot of stuff different, he didn't have to do like massive changes to achieve a really good result. Others may not have that. So it's if you have a problem with your 2-year-olds, then think about them. Like do something about them. If you have a problem if your calving spread is too slow, and then you have a problem getting later calving cows in calf, then let's treat them differently. Let's do something proactively to change the outcome, because just doing the same thing will not change a lot. So I guess the proactiveness in this, and the other thing I guess that is perhaps not so much of a problem this year at this point, but just thinking about what Dave touched on with the 3-year-olds. For all we know, because the once a day, they could have been better body conscious score targets at calving and all those sort of things. And I think at times we forget a little bit about this. I see 3-year-olds as kind of like an age group that ends up being set up to not have success, because they end up being dried off as a rising 3 at the same time as the rest of the cows in the herd, but they have that extra half condition score to put on and don't have the time for it, and then they don't perform. So I guess that just making sure, like Dave said, get the basics right, be honest about how much condition score you can actually put in cows and set them up to success the following year.
Yeah, nice. So look, I might wrap it up there. Some great messages there. Dave, I'll thank you again for putting your data out there for everybody online to have a look at. It's not something, when you get a bad result, it's probably not one that people want to sort of speak too much about. But obviously there's a lot to be learnt out of it as well. So really want to thank you again for putting yourself out there and opening yourself up for the conversation, and then sharing your learning, because that's it's, as I say, it's not always conclusive or 100% evident in terms of what's gonna sort of help improve the result, but the analysis of the data, the digging in and actually trying to pull it apart and sort of isolating the areas to improve and how you might go about that has been a really interesting journey over the last sort of 12 months or so. So it's nice to come back and touch on that. Jair, it's great to have your expertise, because that gives it a little bit of perspective in terms of what we're seeing on an individual farm relative to the broader region and national data. So it gives a bit of context around what we're seeing, and obviously the access that you've got to the data behind what we see and things like fertility focus report is really impressive. So thanks again to both of you guys. It's awesome to have that available chat online. Thanks again to our sponsors that help Smash run their events. So that's again for Dairy NZ, Balance, Barenbrug, LIC, FMG, BNZ and Pioneer. And thanks to all those that were listening online and putting the questions up as well. We really appreciate it. Thanks. We'll talk again soon. Bye for now.
Thanks, team. Thank you.
Thanks.